BEGC 107 Solved Assignment 2022-23. Section A. Write short notes on the following in about 200 words each. A. Shakespearean Tragedy. Answer. Tragedies like Othello, Hamlet, King Lear, and Macbeth are highly acclaimed literary work of Shakespeare till date in the whole world. His tragedies are the tales of suffering leading to death that are not due to fate but by the irresponsible deeds of the tragic hero. He framed his characters in such a way that his character perform mistakes after mistakes which decide his doom. Shakespearean tragedy are named the apotheosis of the human spirit. His tragedies are not melancholy, but it is soft and courageous. The credit of adding supernatural elements goes to him. Supernatural creatures like ghosts and witches are introduced in the tragedy closely connected the character. He hasn't done any poetic justice in his literary work of drama. Both Elizabethan and James I periods witnessed the fine work of Shakespeare. B. The Metaphysical Poets. Answer. Metaphysical poetry was the outstanding feature of English verse in the half of the century. Metaphysical poetry covered a lot of poets who were different in writing style but shared common apprehension with Baroque literature. Samuel Johnson, 1709-84, is one of the metaphysical poets, which mean a group of poets who made innovative use of metaphor in poems. They were skilled and creative in explaining the themes like religion and love. Due to the presence of the printing press, the mass production of literature took place. The King James Bible got the biggest benefit. John Donne, The Good Moral and Valediction, etc., George Herbert, Collar, The Quip and the Pulley, etc., Richard Crashaw, A Hymn to the Name, Honor of the Admirable Saint Teresa, etc. Andrew Marvell, Under His Highness from Ireland, The Lord Protector, Henry Vaughan, The Retreat and Childhood, etc., and Abraham Cowley, The Request, The Given Love, etc., are important metaphysical poets. The metaphysical poets were eclipsed in the 18th and 19th centuries by Romantic and Victorian poets, but 20th century readers and scholars, seeing in the metaphysical an attempt to understand pressing political and scientific upheavals, engaged them with renewed interest. In his essay, The Metaphysical Poets, T.S. Eliot, in particular, saw in this group of poets a capacity for devouring all kinds of experience. Donne, 1572-1631, was the most influential metaphysical poet. His personal relationship with spirituality is at the center of most of his work, and the psychological analysis and sexual realism of his work marked a dramatic departure from traditional, genteel verse. His early work, collected in satires and in songs and sonnets, was released in an era of religious oppression. His Holy Sonnets, which contains many of Donne's most enduring poems, was released shortly after his wife died in childbirth. The intensity with which Donne grapples with concepts of divinity and mortality in the Holy Sonnets is exemplified in Sonnet X, Death, Be Not Proud, Sonnet 14, Batter My Heart, Three-Personed God, and Sonnet 17, Since She Whom I Loved Hath Paid Her Last Debt. Herbert, 1593-1633, and Marvell, 1621-1678, were remarkable poets who did not live to see a collection of their poems published. Herbert, the son of a prominent literary patron to whom Donne dedicated his holy sonnets, spent the last years of his short life as a rector in a small town. On his deathbed, he handed his poems to a friend with the request that they be published only if they might aid any dejected poor soul. Marvell wrote politically charged poems that would have cost him his freedom or his life had they been made public. He was a secretary to John Milton, and once Milton was imprisoned during the Restoration, Marvell successfully petitioned to have the elder poet freed. His complex lyric and satirical poems were collected after his death amid an air of secrecy. Section B. Answer the following reference to the context in about 300 words each. A. Forget thyself to marble, till with a sad leaden downward cast thou fix them on the earth as fast. And join with thee calm peace and quiet, spare fast, that oft with gods doth diet, and here's the Muses in a ring I round about Jove's altar sing. Answer. Context. These lines are taken from Il Penseroso by John Milton. Explanation. The speaker orders, vain deluding joys, to leave him. He then welcomes melancholy as a goddess so bright that humans cannot see her. Instead, they perceive her as apparelled in black, the hue of wisdom. She is the daughter of Saturn, a solitary god, and of Vesta, the goddess of the hearth. The speaker invites melancholy to come forth and bring with her as companions peace, quiet, fasting from food, leisure, and contemplation, a cherub. A nightingale's song to interrupt the silence would be welcome, for it would help in smoothing the rugged brow of night, line 58. The sight of the moon crossing the sky, like one that had been led astray through the heathen's wide pathless way, 69 to 70, would also be welcome. A room with glowing embers, line 79, that cast a gloomy light would make a fine retreat for thoughtful musing. The only sound would be the chirp of a cricket or the bell of the town crier as he goes about his rounds. Or let my lamp at midnight hour be seen in some high lonely tower, lines 85 to 86, the speaker says. There, he would contemplate the constellation known as Ursa Major, commonly called the Bear or the Big Dipper, or consider the profound views of Plato. There he might also reflect on a great tragedy, such as that which befell Troy or that which was enacted on the stages of ancient Greece. In the morning, when the sun begins to fling his flaring beams, lines 131 to 132, melancholy would escort the speaker to arched walks of twilight groves, line 133, and hide him near a brook from the sun rays while the bee hums and the waters murmur. There, he would fall into a mysterious dream. Upon awaking, he would hear the sweet music of a spirit. B. Heavens bless my son, from Ireland let him reign to far Barbadoes on the western main, of his dominion may no end be known, and greater than his father's be his throne. Answer. Context. These lines are taken from Mac Flecknoe by John Dryden. Explanation. Flecknoe, his forehead dewy with oblivion, shakes his head and scatters the drops on his son. He stands there in a prophetic mood and declares that heaven shall bless his son and he shall reign from Ireland to Barbadoes. There will be no end to his dominion and it will be greater than his father's. Flecknoe pauses to let the people cry Amen. He continues, proclaiming admiringly that his son still advances in impudence and ignorance. Others can learn success, but from Flecknoe, Shadwell has learned pangs without birth and fruitless industry, line 148. No one will ever accuse Shadwell of toil of wit, line 150. Let the others, like George who treads the stage, and his characters Dormant, Cully, Fopling, and Cockwood, try to charm audiences. Shadwell's fools will always defend him and his lack of sense. The others should try to imitate him and thus be not mere copies but his own issue. All the men of wit ought to be full of Shadwell, only differing in name. Care should be taken not to let someone like Alien, line 163, Sedley interject wit into prose. See, the hoary prince in majesty appeared high on a throne of his own labors reared. At his right hand our young Ascanius sat Rome's other hope and pillar of the state, his brows thick fogs instead of glory's grace, and lambent dullness played around his face. Answer. Context. These lines are taken from Mac Flecknoe by John Dryden. Explanation. Empress Fame publishes the account of Shadwell's name. Nations hearing of him meet together. There are no Persian carpets lining the street, only scattered limbs of mangled poets, line 99. Writers like Heywood, Shirley, and Ogilvy lay in the street, but it is mostly Shadwell that clogs it up. Finally, the prince appears in all his majesty, sitting atop a throne of his labors. Flecknoe compares Shadwell to Ascanius, son of Aeneas, who famously sat at his father's right hand and inherited the kingdom. Shadwell's brows are like thick fogs, and dullness swirls about his visage. Shadwell swears he will maintain dullness until his death. He will never make peace with wit and never sign a truce with sense. The king, having made his own unction of ale, places a mug of it in his son's hand. He conveys the right to rule over his son who had, since a young age, practiced the righteous lore, line 124. The king seems to consecrate his son's head, and at that very moment it is as if 12 owls fly off from his left hand. This is reminiscent of Romulus' expectation of rule from his observation of 12 vultures. The admiring crowd shouts acclamations. Section C, answer the following questions in about 800 words each. Discuss the character of Bosola in The Duchess of Malfi. Answer. Bosola is a clever, manipulative, witty, and sharp-witted person. Though he is a changed man at the end. He is appointed as a spy to the Duchess of Malfi on orders of her two brothers, Ferdinand and the Cardinal. He secretly passes information of the Duchess's pregnancy to her brothers. He wins the trust of the Duchess. He takes secrets to her brothers. It is Bosola who betrays her, which resulted in so many deaths afterwards. He acts as a villain who can do anything for power and his ambition. But the circumstances do not allow him to gain power. He is a profound scholar. He becomes the puppet of Cardinal and works on his orders throughout the play. He tortures the Duchess. He killed the Duchess, her husband, and their children. Later he kills Ferdinand and Cardinal too. He is a malcontent and an avenger too. He is the most difficult character to deal with in the play. He is a scholar, philosopher, and a wise man. But he is manipulative, clever, and witty, and has a criminal mind. He is appointed as a spy to keep watch on the Duchess. He uses words cleverly. He runs after those things which he wants desperately. He has strong sexual desire. He is jealous, proud, and bloody. Antonio blames Bosola over his cleverness, that it is due to Bosola he met with failures and dissatisfaction. He can go up to any extent to achieve his ambitions. He becomes manipulative and dishonest just to gain power. He wants power, so he accepts Cardinal's offer for spying over the Duchess. He is so good at observing Duchess that he confirms the Duchess's pregnancy and informs the brothers of the Duchess. He gains her trust where she tells her all the secrets. He misleads her and gets her arrested. And gains good remarks in the books of the brothers. He comments that her brothers are the most shrewd and cruel ones in the world. He is a greedy man too. He feels happiness on being offered gold by the brothers and is ready to kill anybody for the metal. Circumstances force him to turn into a bad man, but he has shades of a good man too. His circumstances make him unkind. But he knew that her brothers are cunning and manipulative characters. He is intelligent and judges people correctly. He comments on the characters of her brothers that their hearts are the rotten graves. They are unworthy and destroy anybody's life. You are a plague in your sister's life. He knew he was doing wrong by killing the Duchess, so he refuses to take gold as a reward after killing her. He finds himself unable to concentrate at the body of the Duchess along with Ferdinand. and he decides to put Antonio to a safe place, far from the place of these cruel brothers. Later he goes against Cardinal and takes revenge from Cardinal. He gives him a fatal stab. In this way he takes revenge on the Duchess. His speeches involve his philosophical mind. His conversations and statements show the power of words as they are chosen wisely. His observations of the personalities of different characters are exact and faultless. He is intelligent and brave enough to present the real pictures of the characters in front of them with great vices. He even compares that the brothers of the Duchess are the plum tree which attract crows, caterpillars, and pies like him with their riches. His statements exhibit his scholarship, but his company with the cruel and Machiavellian brothers turned him into a villain. But when the reality was revealed to him, he changed his mind and decided to avenge the killing of the Duchess. He decided not to change his peace of conscience for all the wealth of Europe. So when Bosola reached the cardinal to stab him with his sword, he offered him large sums of money, but he clarified that his prayers and proffers are both unseasonable. And he stabbed him without wasting any time. David Cecil sums Bosola's act and deeds by saying that he has the splashes of goodness too. It takes him to guilt. At first, he is working under harsh circumstances and leads him to perform sins. He is middle-aged, poverty-stricken, thankless, and under bad fortune. Any precious bait can make him do any act. Both the brothers use him for their selfish means, and he does so for his own ambitions. The brothers take advantage of his situations and moods against their sister. He breaks her trust, reveals her secret plans, tortures her and kills her and her family. He never likes his tasks given by the brothers. He feels unpleasant about their next heinous order for him. He talks good of Duchess to the brothers. He tells them about her courage. He talks to the Duchess while torturing her with sadness. Write a critical appreciation on his blindness. Answer. It is the most honored personal sonnets. Its date of commencing is not sure. It is an autobiographical sonnet in which he explains his loss of sight. It is a religious sonnet with the quotations from the Bible and the Christian faith. He thinks that with the loss of vision at the time of starting of the poem, he would not be able to fulfill God's service. With further reading, we come to know that he will continue working, taking it as God's will despite his failing health. And at the end of the poem he was firm that God or his angels are helping him in continuing his work. In the beginning he says that he spent his half of his life serving humanity. But with the gradual loss of sight he will spend his rest of his life in darkness. His talent wills no longer work as he is turning blind and could not see anything. He is struggling to accept his fate. In the second verse, he doesn't lament and thinks whether he can still serve God. Taking Christian terms, he believes in the divine grace in human's life. Here, he accepted that whatever God is giving to him is the gift of God to a man. In the third verse, he believes that man's patience and wisdom during hard times please God. Many angels are working non-stop to fulfill God's work. Actually, he means to say that he has served God with the vision, but he can still serve him even without the eyesight. It is God's will that he is blind and still serving him. And he is satisfied. Accepting God's will and keeping blind faith in him are the victorious features of the poem at the end. It narrates the life and teachings of Christ with the help of numbers of moral stories. It is the sacred book of the Christians and often called the Gospel of Jesus Christ the Savior. It includes Psalms and the Proverbs that instruct man to choose a right path to get the heaven of God. In Sonnet 19, on the blindness, biblical phrases like God's love for his children, accept and acknowledge his will, ere half my days, etc., are used. Notes. Light is spent. This clause has double meaning. A. How I spend my days. B. How it is that my sight is used up. Ere half my days. The date of composition. Half my life. Talent. The biblical meaning is faculty, whereas Milton uses it as a literary talent. Useless, and used. Therewith, by that talent. Account, record of achievement. Exact, demand. Fondly, foolishly. Patience. Milton personifies patience, capitalizing it and having it speak. God, gifts. He requires nothing outside of himself to exist, and he is happy. Everything is in him. Yoke, burden. Post, travel. Figures of speech alliteration. My days in this dark world and wide. Metaphor. Though my soul is more bent / to serve there with my Maker, the author compares his soul to his mind. Personification. But patience, to prevent paradox, they also serve who only stand and wait. Discuss Paradise Lost as an epic. Answer. Epic is often a long narrative poem, an expressive series of the deeds of a historical hero or heroine. Iliad and the Odyssey are the epics. An epic has some important characters, based on fable, theme, sentiments, and evaluating actions. Everything revolves around the action. Fables are the backbone of the epics, so this epic has. Its plot was taken from the Bible with a moral. Paradise Lost is an epic poem by John Milton in blank verse, whose first version, published in 1667, consists of 10 books. And the second version came in 1674 with 12 chapters. This epic gave him the tag of the greatest poet of his age. The poem tells the Bible story of the fall of man from heaven, the temptation of Adam and Eve by Satan. In this epic he compared the rule of God with the rule of King Charles I, who is not acceptable by the people in England. Through this epic, Milton praised the English people who opposed and executed Charles I. In Paradise Lost, blank verse was used, although it was not used much in the 17th century. He used it with great skill. He uses blank verse with syntax which is very influential. The Milton style of using Homeric similes, classical writings, and symbolic meanings made it an epic. The Paradise Lost's theme is grand, elevated, and great. It is sublime and comprehensive. It has an universal appeal. It covers the rebel of Satan in heaven and wars. The hero and heroine of the epic, Adam and Eve, represents the entire human race, which is created by the Supreme Lord. The tensions and political turmoil that engulfed Milton influenced his work, Paradise Lost. The social conditions during his time gave him lots of concepts to sum them up in an epic. Paradise Lost is the account of a few pages in Genesis about Adam and Eve and the tempest. The epic is a political picture that represents the political happenings during his time. The players, situations, and the concepts that are shown in the Paradise Lost are true-to-life events and people that took place at his time. He got many chains of events to form the epic. John Milton had seen the period where the conflicts were there between King Charles I and the Parliament. The mindset of Charles I changed when he took over the throne and became a tyrant. He misused his powers as a king and disobeyed the Parliament. Milton conveyed the difference between a divine king and the human king through his epic, The Paradise Lost. The connection between the social and political disorder occurring during Milton's life and the situations in Paradise Lost are same and clear. He even uses social values of his time and high morals in the epic. He even expresses his views on the flaws of the divine rights of kings. And King Charles I was unfit for this post. The epic poem is written in 12 books in blank verse, telling the tale from the Bible. The moment when Adam and Eve were attracted by Satan, he used allusions, immense and complex vocabulary, similes, and images.